why don't we talk to people who know instead of me just gassing on about the subject? Here with me in Studio 3, Chuck Rocha. He is the president of Solidarity Strategies. He is the director of the Latino Project PAC. He is a Democrat. He is a Mexican-American East Texas gun rack Democrat.
Nice.
Is that accurate?
I'm going to put that on my card.
That's it. And that's how you know it works. Welcome back, Chuck. Now, I want to introduce you to somebody, Internet, of whom I have heard very wonderful things. Loretta Lepore is a Republican strategist, and she joins us from our Atlanta bureau. And Loretta, what the Internet told me about you was that you used to work for Sonny Perdue down there in Georgia, and you used to be on the CNN. These things are true?
These things are very true. Good to be with you, Chris.
True. Okay, it's good to have you here. So, Loretta, let's start with you. This race, president's going up there. The race is pretty close. Last night's debate was very contentious, and you heard there in that opening sound, you heard Ed Markey basically say, you need to reelect me, or you need to elect me and keep this seat in Democratic hands, or the Tea Party is going to have its sway and derail the president. Is this approach likely to work in Massachusetts?
Well, I don't know. It's an interesting approach he took in that his opponent, Mr. Gomez, is running a very moderate campaign. Obviously, Massachusetts is a Democratic home state, not even remotely purple by any stretch.
No,
and so it seems interesting that he took on the Tea Party, but it kind of goes to speak to the fact that he's feeling threatened. I think his posture indicates that he feels somewhat threatened. And I thought it was interesting that he accused the Tea Party of being an obstacle to the president's agenda. Clearly, their agendas do not align. But he accused them of being an obstacle when he, in the same debate, indicated that he was going to draw lines in the sand when it came to tax reform. And there were issues that he clearly would discuss and that were totally off the table for him. So in some ways, he was somewhat disingenuous, seems a little frustrated, seems a little tired. And it's going to be a long 2 weeks for him.
Now, Chuck, it's obvious that he would like to, however moderate Gabriel Gomez is, it will be necessary for Mr. Markey to say, well, he may tell you he's moderate, but the reality is he is a dangerous, radical right-wing conservative hiding in moderate guise. But right now the Democratic base is not going real pitter-patter over the president, right?
We have been down this path before.
Yes,
and I
with
think
Martha Coakley.
Yes. And so that's burned into a lot of Democrats where we don't forget that.
Okay.
And that we don't need to take anything for granted. I think that Mr. Gomez is doing what he has to do to appeal to a lot of people in that state who don't normally vote for Republicans, but the turnout will be so low. And what we learned last time, if we can't take anything for granted, I think that's when you see the president, the vice president, everything's on the table. So I think that we got to make sure that turnout is...
Well, but wait a minute, Obama campaigned for Martha Coakley and she lost, right? Am I right, Loretta?
Yes, and I mean, I don't think that the president right now is bringing a lot of cachet to the table for Congressman Markey. I mean, the president's bringing, candidly, a lot of baggage. And Congressman Markey has been in Congress for over 30 years. Let's not forget that. So it's not as though he can inoculate himself from some of the things that have transpired recently. Congress's ratings are at 6%. And so he has his own unfavorability issues. And then you combine that with what's occurring with the president right now. And he's got some serious credibility issues. And so I don't know that this is going to necessarily boost Congressman Markey's poll numbers. And I think that Mr. Gomez has an opportunity here. We'll see how he kind of addresses what transpires in the president's remarks there in Massachusetts.
Now, Chuck, you've worked a special election or two over the years. Now, if you're basically, what you get in a special election is the most concentrated form of the electorate in a given district or state.
Absolutely.
If you have, for example, if you were doing a special election in West Virginia, you'd know that you could count on union members, especially the teachers' unions and others, the mine worker retirees, that they were money in the bank to a certain degree compared to swing voters. In Massachusetts, though, it's a very democratic state. It's a very liberal state, but they sometimes elect Republicans, and there is that core rump of Republicans there. If you were advising the Markey campaign, what would you tell them to do to deal with these independent voters and with some Republican leanings?
We would do targeting backwards like we were doing a presidential race in Iowa. We have our 1s, 2s, and 3s. We'd make sure that everybody who's voted in the last 5 Democratic primaries, we're talking to them, we're shoring them up, making sure that they're turning out. There's 2 different apparatuses. One is turnout of all of those yellow dog Democrats, as we'd call them in the South, and then there's this, how do we get these people in the middle who may be mad at their government, who may be worried about scandal, who may have a lot of concerns and be driving them to the polls, to make sure they're hearing his message over Mr. Gomez's message, to say we can't take it for granted, a la Coakley, and people still have a little bit of a lag from the Scott Brown thing. So it can be done, and they haven't forgotten that.
Loretta, the danger for Gomez, of course, is this. The better he does, the more Scott Brown sort of had a perfect storm in Massachusetts in the sense that Coakley was not a good candidate, and the window was so short for that campaign. It was even shorter than this one. The window was so short that Brown could be a brief phenomenon, crop up and crest over into the polls before the Democrats could marshal their forces. This time, though, it looks like the Democrats are doing the kind of things that Chuck has described to get their people to the polls.
Right, but I think the challenge is, as you said, we have a very compressed time frame here. We have 2 weeks. I think that works in Mr. Gomez's favor. I think some of the challenges Mr. Gomez has is that he is a newcomer, essentially, to politics. So his brand name may not be out there. I think, Scott Brown had some brand recognition going into that election. So he does have that challenge as well.
Absolutely.
Right.
That's right.
I was underwear while I had money. I wouldn't be here right now. Let's be clear.
We can thank heaven for small favors.
Absolutely.
I guess that's the thing.
Right. Let's put it all in perspective.
Let's put it all into underwear-based perspective. Loretta, let's take a quick break. Will you stick with us? Because when we come back, I want to talk about what's going on in the NSA and the congressional role and oversight, but also the chances for an immigration bill. Let me warn you, Chuck came armed for bear on this one, so he's flexing right now. So be ready. And you, Internet, stick around. Stick around.
Thanks.
The president is, inherited this situation, is trying to show his own independence, is trying to show that he's taken a different path in terms of protecting America. Yet the question always comes back to, well, what about the rights of people to know what's going on?
That was Bill Pascrell. He is a Democratic congressman from New Jersey. He was talking to our Fox News colleague, Chad Pergram, last night after Pascrell and others received a closed-door briefing from the administration about the NSA snoop, and takes the point of view that Obama's not at fault here. It's not perfect. It was Bush, and it was complicated. And this is power play. So we are with our panel even still, whom the Internet seems quite delighted by, even being called a damn good panel. So that's quite impressive. And let's start again with Loretta Lepore down in Atlanta. Loretta, for Republicans, this has posed a very difficult question. Generally, the party that favors strong national security and not necessarily the party that agrees with the ACLU very much. The Republicans are looking for a way to deal with this issue, and it's proving difficult for some of them, right?
Yeah, it really is. But I think the interesting thing about this debate is that it transcends party lines. It transcends partisan politics. You have people, electeds that are across the spectrum on this issue. So, and I think for conservatives, it has been a challenge to be able to articulate and share information about something that they're not supposed to be talking about in the first place. So it's created quite a conundrum. And I think from the perspective of blame, the blame game, is it President Obama's fault? Is it President Bush's fault? That also gets much more muddied because this debate is so fractured. It just doesn't fall to black and white. It's very gray. And I think it's a very productive conversation for the country to have in that balance of privacy versus security. And for people to come to a realization, I think the one positive thing about this is I think that some of us subconsciously knew that we were being monitored. We certainly know that our activity on the internet, our activity on social media, it is ripe for marketers, for the companies that, you know, are managing those sites. They have access to our information. They're profiling us for certain reasons. You know, so I think it's healthy that it's out there and that we're all kind of saying, okay, let's acknowledge that this is an issue. We've got severe and grave security concerns as a nation. You know, people want to hurt us. And we have all this information that the technology age has made available. So where do we as a country go with this? So from that perspective, I think it's healthy.
Chuck, why did anybody want to get reelected president of the United States? Because it's I mean, first term maybe is fun, but at the end when you're Barack Obama and you have to explain like, yeah, we're sifting through your stuff, but we promise we're not doing anything bad unless you deserve it. This is not fun.
Remember how dark Bill Clinton's hair was when he started?
Yeah.
All of them. I mean, it ages them tremendously. What this is a huge distraction, but something that the American people should know about, right? And yes, people, and I was on a program last night on the radio, and they were saying, well, this is all legal. And what we voted for a bill, the Congress, that passed the Patriot Act that talked about a lot of this stuff. And that's but the bottom, at the end of the day, this has made some strange bedfellows. Back to your article, and that a lot of people from the far left and the far right went, that's all good, and this may all be legal,
right,
but we had no idea it was at this level. Right. And what you're doing is you're distracting from a Congress who normally hasn't done anything, who are attempting to get a few things done, but now again we're distracted and the American people are like, it's one thing after another, back to you, and I'll wrap it up in the Obama rights.
Yes, beleaguerment. There is a national beleaguerment now that it's like every day. I heard a couple people talking as they were walking down the street, and these did not look like political pundits, who said every day it's something else. Right. Every day it's something else, and every day it is something else. How does that, Loretta, affect the discussion on immigration? The Senate is trying to move this bill forward, but it's starting to look like a rabbit running past Chuck's shotgun barrel, that sooner or later this thing's going to get blown up, and it's
hopping around.
It's hopping around for now. What's your take?
Well, I think the immigration debate has its own certain dynamics and partisan dynamics, certainly, and complexities in and of itself from this whole, you know, privacy security debate. But I think that overall, you know, it's the security debate along with the incidents at the IRS and the Benghazi and the Justice Department, all of those things have created this sort of cloud that I think has tempered people outside the Beltline, you know, regular Americans, that, you know, are watching this and saying, wait a minute, now who do I believe, and are they what they're telling me, is that really right, and who's in charge up there, and what's going on? And so I think from that perspective, for Americans, just citizens that are going about their daily business, this becomes another big can of worms that just gets put on top of the pot. And it's very difficult because the immigration debate in and of itself, while I think it's positive that the debate is coming to the floor and that it will be a transparent airing of what's actually in the bill, because we haven't really had a lot of discussion about that heretofore. We've heard from various parties on the group of 8, about what's in it, what's not in it. But being able to have this full discussion, perhaps that can cut through of some of the murkiness of some of these other issues that are permeating across federal government.
Chuck, each vote is going to get harder. The first one that they took yesterday was easy, 85-15. Basically a vote was,
should we vote to
should
vote?
The Senate exist? Yes, we agree. 85 of 100 say yes, the Senate should exist and talk about stuff. Each one is going to get tougher. The gangsters say they want 70, not 60, because if they get 70, they believe they can bring more pressure to bear on the Republican House. They're not going to get 70. Can they get 60?
I think they can.
You think
and
they
I think
can?
that,
Quick.
don't quote me on this, but I think Marco Rubio is going to be a big key pin. The immigration bill has become his moped. It's fun to ride, but nobody needs to be seeing him on it.
Nobody needs to be seeing him on it. Don't quote him on that. You can quote him on saying he had a good time talking to Loretta Lepore. Loretta, we thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks, Chris. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, super duper, and Chuck, we thank you. Get ready. West Virginia days are coming. You better get ready.